The First World War was said to be the war of all wars. Over 38 million casualties had arisen, and 17 million deaths out of that 38 million. It was a brutal war, with many new methods of fighting and strategy at hand, and a handful of different battles had created the world we live in today. A significant battle in World War I was the Second Battle of Ypres, which took place in a small town of Ypres in Belgium, on the date of 22nd April to the 25th of May, 1915. The significance of this battle was that it had been the first battle during World War I in which Germans senselessly used poison gas to kill waves of the Allied troops. France, Britain, Belgium, and Canada all fought on the Western Front against Germany, and Canada victoriously won the battle at the end of it. During the battle, the Germans had strategically placed different chlorine bombs around the Western Front, creating a large tear in the Allied lines due to the chlorine killing off soldiers in its path. This helped Germany have the vantage point at first, but Canada ferociously kept retaliating and eventually got back the lost land on the battlefront. Canadians were led by Commander Arthur Currie, and the Germans by a man named Albrecht, the Duke of Württemberg. The outcome of this devastating war was a total of 850,000 casualties, with 325,000 being dead of British soldiers. As you can see, the aftermath of the battle was not a preferred one, with much land being destroyed and many soldiers being killed. This was one of the battles that led to the strengthening of our sense of unity in Canada. This battle also had been advantageous to the Allies, as after the Germans' use of poison gas, it gave the French and British a realization and urge to start developing their own chemical warfare, and would aid their efforts later in battle. One of the soldiers in the Battle of Ypres was named Herbert Carmichael Irwin, and was born on June 26, 1894. He had joined the war when he was 21 years old, as a probationary flight sub-lieutenant. He was to command non-rigid airships, and aided the battle effort by supplying the battlefront with ammunition and other war goods. He had survived the war, and would later become the captain of his own ship. Another crucial battle to the war effort was the Battle of the Somme, which was a 4-month war starting on July the 1st to November 18, 1916. The significance of this battle for the war effort was that it was symbolism and an example of the horrors of trench warfare, and the casualties of the masses that had arisen during the trench stalemate. This battle was based on the strategy of digging trenches in the ground to protect from the new weapons in place. This was due to new weapons being introduced during the war, such as the 3 new types of automated machine guns and 5 different methods of chemical attacks. These were gateways to mass murders. Douglas Haig was the commander of Britain, Fritz von Below of Germany, and Ferdinand Foch of France. These commanders led the battle effort, and the turnout was 57,000 casualties from Britain and 2,000 casualties from France. The aftermath of the battle was the creation of the Western Front, which was a miles upon miles long line of trenches located in Belgium. The significance of the Battle of the Somme for Canadians was, besides the casualties arising from the battle, it also had increased the feeling of unity and autonomy for Canadian soldiers, as they had launched a major attack on the German lines in the summer of 1916. There was not too many famous Canadian soldiers in the Battle of the Somme, but a soldier from England by the name of Wilfred Owen would soon become one of the most known soldiers from the war. He fought in the Battle of the Somme and trained as a sharpshooter for one of the Artists Rifles Officers Training Corps. He would serve as a rifle amongst the trenches and had survived the battle. The Battle of Vimy Ridge was said to be the battle of Canadian nationalism. It was the first Canadian victory that presented the intelligence and effort of Canadian troops. The Germans had control over a very important part of the Western Front, and the British, French, and other troops had at many times attempted to take over the ridge, but failed every time. Then Canadians were ordered to take over the ridge, and with strategical planning, Commander of Canada Arthur Currie used all 4 divisions of Canadian Corps to take over the pinpoint. From April 9th to 12th of 1917, Canadians used a plan involving tactics such as digging shell holes and attacking during the night. Soldiers were trained and assigned specialist tasks such as machine gunner or snipesman. Julian Byng of Britain, Arthur Currie of Canada, and Karl von Fassbender of Germany were all the key point leaders, and led the turnout of the war with approximately 10,000 Canadian casualties and 4,000 deaths. This victory also aided the war effort by giving the Triple Entente a very advantageous point in the Western Front. A key figure in this battle was Sir Edwin Alfred Alderson. He was born on April 8th and had joined the army at the age of 19 in the year of 1878. He had served in many divisions within the Canadian Corps, but later developed conflict with the Army standards. He served as a commander during the Battle of the Vimy Ridge and led the capture of the ridge. He had survived this battle and continued his services until 1920. The Battle of Passchendale, also known as the Third Battle of Ypres, was a very key moment in the decisions made by the war leaders. On the date of July 31st to November the 10th, 1917, Canadian and Britain forces were ordered by Commander Douglas Haig to take over the land of the Somme from Germany. The Allies' strategy in retaking this land was to give meticulous preparation to the artillery and engineers before the attack date. Currie had ordered the construction of roads and reparation of tram lines to try to avoid the awful muddy conditions of the Somme. It was predicted that this battle would bring high casualties. The aftermath of the battle was limited victory by the Allies, with a great sacrifice of 16,000 Canadian casualties. This aided the war effort in means of giving the Allies a sense of symbolism in the war and new vantage point to overpower German troops. This also aided Canadian autonomy as it opened doors to the independence of all Canadians. Speaking of Canadians, Sir Hubert Power was a key leader in the effort of Passchendale. He was born on August 12, 1870, and joined the corps when he was at the age of 18. He was a British commander during the war and served on ground for the Riflemen's Niche. He helped establish Haig's plan and executed it. He survived the battle, but later died in other conflict. The last but not least most important battle was the home front battle. The battle with keeping up with the industry, serving the troops, supplying the armies, and making enough money. Canada's industry served the war in many ways. It was a supplier for many types of goods. Merchant ships would send food, steel, ammunition, weapons, and other product to Europe. The women of the country would either be working the men's jobs or serving as overseas nurses or taxi drivers. They also would be making the shells and military equipment. During the war, many significant events would change the route of the country's system and sense of unity. The War Measures Act would be created by P.M. Borden to allow the detainment without arrest of enemy aliens, as well as strict control over the people in order to ensure security. This would have led to conscription crisis later in the war, when P.M. Borden went against his word and allowed the use of conscription. This created tension between the people and the government. Many protests were held, and this created a crisis in which the people would not trust government affairs with the country. To even more grow fear, an accidental crash of a ship armed with explosives and shells in Halifax proved the lucidity of the war. Many internment camps were held after the War Measures Act to constrain and detain anybody suspected of being of the enemy's nationality. It also allowed for the discrimination of residents not of Canadian or Britain background. All residents would have control over portions of necessities due to such deficit of product. This was called rationing. Another huge contribution of the home front was the merchant marine supply, as many boats were sent overseas to Europe to aid all soldiers. The significance of this is that the merchant line was being cut off by German U-boats, or Unterseeboots, sinking merchant boats on international waters. This eventually led to the instability of the war and resulted in Germany's defeat. A key and highly called for figure during World War I on the home front was Sam Hughes. He was the Minister of Militia, and he served in office from 1911 to 1916. He was born on January the 8th, 1853. He served as a cabinet minister, and he was responsible for sending the new deploys to training in Quebec. He was responsible for all the equipment that got sent out, and all the people and all the numbers during office. World War I had many popular events occurring, and which many had tremendous impact on how we are the way we are today. Thank you for watching my presentation.